Hello, guys, and welcome to the Point. I am your host, Felicia Tripp,
And Joanna Archie.
and we are ecstatic to have you here with us this evening.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, today our guest is going to be Mr. Jed Oppenheim. We're going to be talking about race, religion, and ethnicity as it pertains to Judaism. You know, Joanna, a few weeks ago, actually over a month ago, our good sister Whoopi Goldberg got into a little bit of heat on the show The View. With claims of her being anti-Semitic when she said that the Holocaust had nothing to do with race. So a lot of people got upset from it. So that led us to the conversation that we're about to have today.
Okay.
Okay, and we're also going to be talking about critical race theory and Mississippi Senate Bill 2113. But before we get into that, we're going to play our song for the day. This is going to be our new intro song. So I hope everybody is ready to get into it. Joanna,
Okay.
this
Let
is
me hear.
look. This is this
I'm a
is the
little nervous. I'm nervous.
this is the lovely Miss Junkia Rose. She blessed us a few weeks ago. You may remember her coming on the show. So we're gonna play her now.
Okay.
Hey there, it's been a while since we connected. Can I ask my question? Who have you seen in the mirror lately? You used to be that one. You used to be in control. Not too much ever faced you. Now I don't know you no more. Called you for everything. You need to pick up the phone. Now that I've got you here, say you'll never go. I don't wanna have to ask. I want you to bring her back and don't ever put her back. It's been a long, long, long way home. And I know it's hard out there. Don't go on no more detours. It's the rocket ride. It's a marathon. Hey there, it's been a while since we connected. Glad you could make it. Settle in, it's your reflection, baby. Take a page from your book. It's about time that you let go. You got stuck on a channel. You need a different remote. We still got seats to play. Ain't no time to sit and watch and let it go. Now that I've got you here, say you'll never go. I don't wanna have to ask. I want you to bring her back and don't ever put her back. It's been a long, long, long way home. And I know it's hard out there. Don't go on no more detours. It's a rocket ride. It's on its own. Now that I've got you here, say you'll never go. I don't wanna have to ask. I want you to bring her back and don't ever put her back. It's been a long, long, long way home. And I know it's hard out there. Don't go on no more detours. It's the rocket ride. It's on its own.
All right. And that was the lovely Miss Junkia Rose. And that's me from me to me. So
Okay.
I want I want you guys to make sure that you guys check her out on Apple Music. That's JONQUIA Rose, like the flower. And thank you so much for her lending us her voice on To the Point Live. So how you doing today, Joanna?
I'm doing well. My day has been good so far.
Well,
Blessed.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. Well, Joanna, I would love to introduce you to one of our new sponsors. Well,
Okay.
actually, we want him to introduce himself, Mr. Tavor Smith. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, ladies. How you guys doing?
We are good.
Good,
Excellent,
good.
excellent. So tell the listening audience about yourself and about your business.
Well, my name is Tavari Smith, and I'm from Canton, Mississippi. Born and raised. Back about 4 years ago in 2018, I felt compelled to start a small business, and the name that I gave it was Clean as a Whistle. Clean as a Whistle offer all type of cleaning services. It offer carpet cleaning, window washing, maid service, move out clean outs, COVID cleaning. Uh,
Hmm.
we offer all type of cleaning service, hauling off debris, you name it, we do it. We've been in business for 4 years. We have a staff of 4 people. We service all of Mississippi. And ways to contact us would be through our Facebook page at Clean as a Whistle LLC, uh, or to call us at 601-317-2196, or email us at cleanasawhistle2018 at yahoo.com.
Give that
Excellent.
number one more time. That phone number, just in case someone don't have Facebook or email access.
That telephone number is 601-317-2196. The number again is 601-317-2196.
Okay.
Excellent,
Okay.
excellent. And we're going to give that number out again at the end of the show. And we want to give a special shout out to Mr. Tavoris for coming on as one of the sponsors for the hottest show, To the Point Live, where you all can be informed as well as slightly entertained some
There
of the
you
time.
go. There you
Yeah.
go,
Oh,
Felicia.
all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith, for sharing that with us today. And you guys, we're going to be giving that number out again at the end of the show. So you all can get ready because it's springtime and we want your homes to look what clean as a whistle,
Yes,
exterior and
ma'am.
interior cleaning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, for allowing me to come on the show. Y'all have a great
Thank
show.
you. You too.
Too. And we want to take a moment to shout out our other sponsor, Joanna.
We want to give a shout out to Elaine Williams, owner and operator of Professional Tax and Notary Services. She is year round. She'll come and pick up and deliver your taxes. And so her contact is 601-573-1498. Again, that's Elaine Williams, owner and operator of the Professional Tax and Notary Services, where she pick up and deliver, and she works year round. So you can contact her year round. And again, that number is 601-573-1498.
Excellent, excellent. And we know there are some people who still have not gotten their taxes filed, and that's
Mm-mm.
okay. You still have time before the deadline to give her a call. Give them that number one more time, Joanna.
601-573-1498. And she'll do it after the deadline because she can provide extensions for you if you need
All right now,
it. So
Hey,
if
so
you
yeah,
can't
you
meet the
are.
deadline,
Hey,
she can get that extension in for you.
right. So no need to sweating your edges off. She got you faded. Y'all calm down. Okay. I was talking to myself, but that's okay. And so we also want to give a shout out to J Course Notary and Signing Services. You guys, she does field inspections for mortgage and insurance underwriters, as
Okay.
well as loan signings. So you give her a call. That number is 601-497-9896. That's J Course Notary and Signing Services. She is out here doing field inspections. So all you real estate agents, you know, you need that, especially those of you all who do property rental and inspections. Give her a call. That's J Course Notary and Signing Services, 601-497-9896. Now, Joanna, I was looking at some of the information you sent me over, and the state senate, it has an interesting bill that they just passed recently, and the governor signed off on.
Right, right. I don't hold 1 second, Felicia. Hold.
It's Senate Bill 2113.
Right,
Look, I know you shared quite a few things with me, but yeah, that Senate Bill 2113 critical race theory.
right,
And
right,
I really find this one to be very interesting, Joanna. Not just the fact that, hey, it's critical race theory, and not just the fact that we know that a lot of our, unfortunately, a lot of our legislators are not truly educated on the bills that they pass. It's a lot of things are packed into a bill because they know that it triggers people based
right,
on the name. And I just believe that critical race theory is another one of those things where certain words are triggers, as opposed to this being about anything that's going to move the state forward, about them prohibiting or hindering anything that's actually hurting people of the state. Give me your thoughts, Joanna.
Well, now let me say this. I did hear the governor on the news, I believe it yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and he was saying that this bill will not block our history being taught to our children in the school system. And he said
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. Go ahead. Keep.
Okay, and he was just saying that that bill will not block that. So I think we still need to look into it. We still need to don't just listen to, well, it's not gonna. Let's just make sure that that's not happening in our school system, because they'll tell us anything right off, and then when our kids get in the classrooms, they're not, getting that background and education that our history that we know that they need, and that they would need, they just need. And so I just think that I don't think it was true what he was saying in so many words on yesterday on the news when I saw it. I just
So
think
let
it was pretty much just trying to cover up um, the real bill that was signed on the other day.
So what I would love to do is play a clip from WJTV.
Okay.
Let's hear what he has to say.
Bill, whose
Okay.
authors say they want to ban critical race theory from classrooms, has become law. Governor Tate Reeves signed Senate Bill 2113 today. He says it prohibits the teaching of critical race theory in K through 12 public schools and in the state's public universities and community colleges.
Stand by, everyone.
Critical race theory is an academic framework that examines how racism has shaped public policy and institutions, such as the legal system. It's not really clear yet what practical impact this new law will have. Officials with the State Department of Education insist critical race theory is not taught at the K through 12 level. And there's only one class at Ole Miss that examines the social construction of race's impact on our nation's legal history.
Okay, so that wasn't necessarily from the governor's mouth, but there was WJTV's coverage on that. And there was an interesting point made about the fact that that's not even taught in high schools or grade schools here anyway. It's actually only taught in one place. I'd like to play a clip about that as well. It was aired on The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. So let's take a listen.
Okay.
About it. To date, this course has been the most impactful and enlightening course I've taken throughout my entire undergraduate career and graduate education at the state of Mississippi's flagship university. An opportunity for people from every background and race to come together and discuss very important topics which would otherwise go undiscussed. That's from a letter the law student sent to the Republican-controlled Mississippi House Education Committee. Now in her second year at the University of Mississippi Mississippi School of Law, Brittany Murphy shocked her conservative friends and family when she signed up for a class on critical race theory. She told them, quote, "I'm either going to completely agree with this or I'm going to be able to say, no, this class is terrible. The best way to have an opinion about this class is literally to take it. Imagine that. Joining us now is Molly Minta, a reporter covering higher education for Mississippi Today and Open Campus, both digital nonprofit newsrooms. She reported the story inside Mississippi's only class on critical race theory. Molly, great story. What surprised you while you were talking to Brittany Murphy for your story?
Well, first, thank you so much. So critical race theory, it's been a really big topic during the legislative session so far, and even sort of before going into it. Like our governor, Tate Reeves, and House Speaker Philip Gunn had both kind of vowed to ban the theory in speeches. So it's been on a lot of people's minds. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was surprised by anything Brittany told me, because going into our interview, I had read the letter that she sent. But I guess I would say that I just really appreciated like her bravery and her honesty in speaking out about, you know, going against the party line in Mississippi, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Right. And really going up against friends and family. I mean, you wrote this about Brittany's experience. She was excited by what she was learning, and she wanted to share it with her peers. She started chatting with her conservative classmates about how the readings weren't like anything she'd thought. Am I going to regret talking to you about this? A classmate joked. Do you think Brittany's experience might change some of her classmates' minds?
I think that's certainly what Brittany wants. You know, she put so much heart into her letter, and especially in talking to me, you know, she just kept saying, like,
yeah. So Joanna, that was just a clip, you know, and I did cut it short, but the fact is that critical race theory is only taught in that one space in Mississippi, and it's an elective for law students. So I just find it strange that so much energy has been tied into a focus. I don't find it strange, and I don't even know. I'm being facetious when I say I find it strange, because it's actually right on cue with so many things that occur. You know, there's so many things that are based on what party a person is affiliated with, and I'm talking about elected officials. Is everything is based more on party as opposed to what policies are actually going to help advance the state, whether it be through education, health, infrastructure. You know, Mississippi ranks last in so many of these areas. I think that it is absolutely astonishingly horrible that so much focus and attention has been paid to something that is not a negative factor on the state, and then you turn around and give so much explanation as to why it's not a factor in anything that's being taught. But simultaneously, you have the MDE that is taking certain elements of social studies and Black history out of the curriculum altogether. So, what, you know, why that is occurring, Joanna, I don't know. But again, critical race theory is not being taught in grade schools yet. They spend a lot of time trying to articulate to people that this is not going to impact what's taught in the classrooms as far as history, but they are simultaneously removing Black history from the social studies curriculum, which is something different than critical race theory. And no, it's just kind of being glazed over with conversation about critical race theory. What do you think about this? I think we're having a technical difficulty there with Joanna. But yeah, I'm just going to read a little bit from the bill here. It says Senate Bill 2113 does not contain the term critical race theory, but the proponents of Senate Bill 2113 have described the bill as an effort to prevent teaching of critical race theory at any Mississippi public school, including institutions of higher learning. At the January 12th, 2022 Senate Education Committee hearing, Superintendent of Education Dr. Carrie Wright stated that we do not have critical race theory in our curriculum and that she was not aware of critical race theory being taught at any K through 12 public schools in Mississippi. Dr. Wright did concede that critical race theory could be being taught at Mississippi's Institutes of Higher Learning and probably in law schools, and that's in quotes. So there's no probably in it. That is exactly where it's taught. Okay, Joanna, is your mic back up? Not quite. Okay, Joanna's going to be back with us here shortly. But so, yeah, some of the concepts outlined in Senate Bill 2113, namely discrimination against individuals based on their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin, remain largely illegal under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And for this reason, this bill would likely only have limited impact on current practices in K through 12 schools. However, the provision does prohibit classification of students based on account of race. Is written vaguely enough that it could be interpreted to have implications beyond what is currently federal law. So I know that there's going to be a lot of litigation with this. I just foresee it. Joanna, is your mic up? Okay, so while we get our mics adjusted, guys, we're going to take a break. I want you guys to listen to what I want you guys. I'm sorry. Look, and that's me jumping the gun with what we are playing. But yeah, I want you guys to be mindful that legislation is currently in session for Mississippi. So make sure that you are taking time to log into what's going on. These sessions are live online. We're going to be putting it up on Facebook. You guys should be following us at To The Point Live, and that's on Facebook. We have a group as well as a page, and we're going to post those links on there. You guys need to be tuned into the sessions that are going on right now and just be educated. Be educated on what's going on. And that again, that is Senate Bill 2113, Senate Bill 2113. And as far as the information on critical race theory itself, you can actually tune in on you can go on YouTube, and Mississippi Today is the one who broke that story. It's a great story, you guys. You can actually hear from the student that was interviewed, who is a member of the Republican. She is not was. She is a member of the Republican Party. She took the class and it opened up her mind to a different thought process with this, and I think that's what it's going to take. We have to go beyond parties and party affiliation and feeling like your loyalty to a particular party should be something that keeps you from actually looking deeper into what's going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's be mindful of that. Now, I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest. We have with us today Mr. Jed Oppenheim. Jed is a community advocate, activist, and he's a former member of the Jackson Public School Board. And we're actually going to be diving into the conversation about what happened on The View with Whoopi Goldberg. We're talking about anti-Semitism, talking about race, religion, culture, and how those things can be misinterpreted. Okay, so we're going to look at this as an opportunity to learn. because that's what it's all about. Throughout history, just as Black people have been ostracized, and the Jewish population has faced a lot as well. So we're going to be diving into that conversation. Again, our guest is Mr. Jed Oppenheim. I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself. Greetings, and how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It's a beautiful afternoon, so I'm doing fine.
Excellent. I'd like for everyone to welcome Mr. Jed Oppenheim. Mr. Oppenheim, if you would introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Yeah, my name is Jed Oppenheim. I'm a resident here in the city of Jackson. Been here for about 13 and a half years. Got a family. Been doing work around education, juvenile justice, food systems, a great number of things. Served on the local school board for a number of years. Worked for a foundation covering a lot of issues like economic security, food systems, early childhood education, and maternal and child health.
Okay, good deal. Now, when I contacted you in relation to what happened with Whoopi Goldberg as it pertains to her comments on the Holocaust, I think the first thing I asked you if you would be willing to come on and speak for all things Jewish. No, I'm just kidding. But
Right. Can't help you there, but yes.
Right. But yeah, if you could just come on to voice your opinion of the situation and just kind of enlighten people from a perspective of Judaism. So I think that one of the things that people tend to cross it as it pertains to Judaism is ethnicity versus race versus religion. So can you give some clarity as it pertains to that?
Yeah, for sure. Let me talk a little bit about my personal history and identity a little bit. I'm about a third or fourth generation Jewish immigrant from a third or fourth generation Jewish immigrant family. I was raised in West LA, but my the ancestors that I know of came from an area of kind of far East Europe, actually Transylvania. For those who are, follow all the vampire Dracula stuff, but and they fled Europe at the beginning part of the 20th century, fleeing persecution of people of Jewish faith and Jewish culture and whatnot. The question of identity, of culture. I am not particularly a practicing Jew. I don't do too much. We do a little bit of stuff. I think each generation has gotten a little bit less religious. I think from the faith perspective, definitely the identity and the culture piece are very much through and through. Through my bloodline, through various practices and kind of thinking, that we have. And like with most faiths, there's kind of the progression of very conservative, very literal kind of interpretations of whatever their faith texts are, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Bhagavad Vedas. There's kind of a spectrum, right, from very conservative to very progressive or reform or whatever you might call it. So I would kind of land in the kind of very progressive part of the Jewish traditions, I would say. We just had a child, and it'll be important to, my wife's Christian, but it'll be important to kind of interweave, all aspects of some faith and some traditions and whatnot. So this question about, one, the Holocaust, racial identity, ethnic identity, cultural identity is a really fascinating one. I think, and I just watched the full clip of the Whoopi Goldberg interview, what's the show called? The View. Sorry, I was going to call Good Morning America, but I just watched the full 6 or 7 clip of the whole segment. And it's a really interesting thing because I've been in spaces with many Jews who do not identify as white. I absolutely identify as white because I think there's this question of how to look at this through the American lens, where we are talking about race, we are talking about things through a black, white kind of lens and perspective, and to look at the Holocaust and what Adolf Hitler was doing with that same lens makes things a little bit muddy. Hitler absolutely saw Jews as a race, but in the American context, I would not say Jews are a race, right? If I walk into a room at Kroger or at a school building, nobody's going to look at me and be like, "Oh, Jew," you know.
Right.
They're gonna be like, "Oh, look, that tall white guy over there," you know, like he's over there. He's that tall white guy. They're not going to say, "Oh, that tall Jewish guy," right? Unless they might know I'm Jewish and kind of kid around or whatever. And so it's really interesting to look at what Whoopi Goldberg said and this idea around race, and that Hitler wasn't Hitler wasn't killing Jews; he was just killing other white people, right? Well, in the American context, right, in the American lens, that's very true. I actually didn't see too much wrong with Whoopi Goldberg's comments at all. When couching it in this idea of, oh yes, of course, she has this American lens, right, which we are talking about race, we are talking about equity, we are looking at things through this lens. Now, amongst Jews, there's absolutely disagreements about, are we a race? Are we a ethnicity? Are we a culture? I would say yes to ethnicity, yes to culture, no to race in the American context. Now, in the context of Europe in the 1940s, when absolutely Jews were being othered because of their perceived othering of race, that's something that's very familiar in the American context for Black Americans, for Indigenous Americans, for Asian Americans. I would not say the same for Jews, in my humble opinion, given that it is a faith. Think about like Christianity and Islam. You can't say that those are racial groups, right? Because they're super diverse racially, right? Jews aren't quite as diverse, and there's not a huge segment of Black Jews, but there are Black Jews, right? There are Arab Jews, so looking at Whoopi Goldberg's comments through our lens as people in America who maybe do or do not have understandings or grounding in race and kind of this creation of race, which was very much created as an American ideology to separate Black people and white people, right? I think about like in the 17th century, before we were even a country, you think about the Black codes, right? Where what's her name? I think it's Elizabeth Key, who was a Black woman, who was an enslaved woman, who sued for her freedom because I think maybe her owner passed away or something. She sued and she said, well, the code says I, as a Christian, can't be an enslaved person. So they freed her and changed the law and said, well, actually, faith doesn't determine whether you're a slave, it's your color, right? And so that kind of thinking is what helped create this perception of race in America, is like, how do we divide folks? As a Jewish tradition, if we were to go a little bit further about the response to Whoopi Goldberg's comments, our tradition says, be very forgiving. I think I forget what network she was a part of, but ABC. So as soon as she apologized, most Jews would say, "Oh, it's good enough. She repented." Why pursue all this stuff, with her? I would say that probably some of this is kind of the overreaction of a social media, fast-paced media environment, right? Like watching that whole segment, they were talking about, in the last 5 years since the administration that started in 2017, there's been a huge increase of anti-Semitic, which is essentially anti-Jewish sentiment, right? You saw in Charlottesville people saying Jews will not replace us. The white supremacists were marching saying Jews will not replace us.
Absolutely.
Right? because there's all these age-old stereotypes of Jews in America who own a bunch of stuff, which isn't really true, right? And so you see that, you saw the murders at a number of different Jewish synagogues over the last couple of years. The Tree of Life was I forget what city that is. I think it was Pittsburgh. You know, they're in a number of different places. In San Diego, I remember when I was growing up. In Los Angeles, there was a number of violent incidences against, you know, Jewish synagogues that maybe I had friends that went to. But I would say that one of the most repulsive, like, anti-Semitic things you know, is going on right now is kind of this perception, particularly right now with COVID, where everybody who, you know, a lot of people on the very far right are equating being told to have a vaccine or vaccine card as equating to being a Jew in Nazi Germany, which is absurd. Like, it's an anti-Semitic sentiment, much like the previous president, who also said, assumed that all Jews saw Israel as the homeland and as actually being their country of origin, which is a complete, you know, whatever. And so this all gets very complicated. Very long story. I know I could probably keep on going, but I think if we as Americans look at what Whoopi Goldberg said through through our own kind of Americanization around what is race, like, she didn't say that much that was that wrong, right? You know, when you look at the Holocaust, and absolutely, like I said, Hitler saw Jews as a different race, right? There's perception. But again, for the most part, you wouldn't be able to tell if you walked into a public setting, you went to a football game, basketball game, or whatever, you'd be like, oh, a bunch of white people hanging out over there, you know? Maybe it was like their religious practices that would tell you, you know, that they might have that faith, but it was by no means the way somebody looked. Sorry, that was a lot long.
No, that was good, and that was very educational, very, very. And for me, I think that oftentimes, and you can give me your opinion on this too. So when things like this arise and the hate train rolls in and this cancel culture really floods due to social media as well as television with the cry of anti-Semitism, do you believe that oftentimes the cry for punishment based on a particular statement comes as a way of dividing the two groups, Jews and Blacks, from people that are neither Jewish or Black?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we as an American people try to find things to divide as often as possible, which is so ironic because we're also a very faith endowed society, right? Like, we are mostly a Christian nation, right? Like but all faith traditions that I'm familiar with, and I've been lucky enough to live here in the Bible Belt. I've lived under Sharia law outside of the country, you know, which is the Muslim law. I have lived in Jewish communities. I've lived in Catholic communities. I've lived in mostly atheist communities as a California liberal, right? So I think what happens is we forget that most of these faith traditions say forgiveness is important, love your neighbor, right? Like, it's interpreted a little bit different within each faith tradition, but essentially, you know, I've read the Quran, I've read most of the Old Testament, I've read most of the New Testament. Like, they're pretty consistent in terms of what they say people should be practicing, right? I think when we add on top of that kind of our ironically really spiteful like society, there's always going to be kind of this elevated, like, where do we find drama, right? Like, where do we like make ratings, right? Like, as TV outlets or news outlets, it's always kind of like, how can we kind of like keep on pressing down this road to incite more conversation? Or you know, I kind of joke, like, I don't watch the TV. I don't even know what the TV stations are called now, but like the really like MSNBC or the Fox, because I don't want people who are just paid to have really crazy opinions on left or right to be telling me how I should be feeling. Like, I need to go study text, or I need to go to the person or to the source or whatever, which is why I wanted to go watch the whole segment with Whoopi Goldberg to understand what they were talking about, right?
Right.
You know, I think it's the same way working with organizers and community around like Black Latino issues, right? Like this is something that because of white supremacy has been created, but what it shows up as is, oh, these immigrants are taking our jobs. Well, that's not the case, right? Like that's not really the case if we're to look at broader things. I grew up, like I said, in Los Angeles, and the LA uprising after the King beatings were a big part of my childhood. And if you look at that, that was 4 white police officers who were found innocent for beating a Black man that was caught on tape, that we've seen clearly plenty of times over the last 30 years since the LA uprising. But when the uprising happened, what you saw was a lot of Black residents who were getting very frustrated at kind of the white supremacy system. But the only thing to go attack in the community were the Korean shop owners, right? Who were in the community because they owned a lot of the liquor stores, or they owned a lot of the gas stations and the things that were in the community where Black residents were. So their frustration came out at these Korean shop owners, right? So the white supremacy, you could walk away and be like, oh, well, that's them fighting amongst each other, as opposed to realizing that there's a whole system that was set up, right? And so I think these kind of incidences, when we look at what Whoopi Goldberg said and kind of our understanding of it, I think gets really muddled when we're talking about, well, this is a way to divide people, and this is what. Yes, that feeds rhetoric, it feeds ratings, it feeds somebody making money off of that. So I think that's kind of a symptom of our culture and kind of the way that we think about each other's humanity in a really odd way.
Absolutely. And I was looking at some of the history in America, because like you pointed out, race as it pertains to America is a lot different when you think about it from an American perspective versus the international perspective. I think a lot of things oftentimes get skewed in conversation, especially coming from social media, because it's brought everybody closer together. And so the opinions often are, again, skewed based on that. So with that, and looking back during a period where anti-Semitism was very high in the early 20th century, when around the 1930s, when the Jewish population wasn't very large, so they were looking for allies, and the Black Americans were those allies during that time. Since then, once getting past that period and into the era, what they call the golden years of the civil rights era around the 1950s, you had Jews in the North who stayed a little bit off of getting directly involved because they didn't want to bring that attention back to the Jewish population, because they had already gone through so much. And so a lot of them didn't necessarily stand as allies. And then when some did, I think it was Rabbi.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. I'm forgetting his name. Not Herschel? No.
I'm thinking about Einhorn, but that was back in 1865 when 1865, and I know he was ran back up to the North because of his stance against slavery. But moving into the 1950s through the 60s, yes, Ein Herschel. Albert was Rabbi Abraham Hirsch.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So you have him on the picture with Martin Luther King, one of the famous pictures in 1965, and a few others who stood in solidarity during the civil rights. But again, that wasn't the collective response. So do you feel, because I feel like that also plays a part in the divisiveness between the two groups, which are minorities in America, and moving forward to today, do you think that strained relationship based on those moments play a part in, again, the divisiveness that seems to me like it's trying to be pushed again in today's America?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I'm gonna try to be as succinct, but my first thought, it's really interesting. So like Jews, or at least visibly Jewish people, or with Jewish names, when they first came as immigrants, they were kept out of colleges and universities. They were segregated into communities. My grandfather, where my dad's parents met, was essentially in a very poor community in Cleveland, where a lot of Hungarian Jews had gone to because other immigrants.
Some of the first housing projects, right?
Right, exactly. And now the community is predominantly Black and Hispanic, but but that's where like originally all those immigrants were coming, because maybe somebody came, then others came to them, and all this kind of stuff. And thinking about like fast forwarding to the 30s and then the 40s, after the Second World War, the GI Bill, right, is a great example. This was one of the first ways, coming back to the way race is categorized in America. When Jews arrived and they had Jewish names, people were like, oh, they're not white, right? But because of also the way that America racially categorizes people, when something like the GI Bill came back, where my grandfather on my other side, my maternal grandfather, who was a GI during World War II, came back after being in the Pacific and was able to access the benefits of the GI Bill because he was now interpreted to be white, right? Whereas a lot of Black GIs were not able to access, the benefits of the GI Bill in terms of housing loans and college access and all these kind of things that still ripple today, right? Like all these things, my family is probably middle class still because of what my grandfather was able to benefit from the GI Bill. So I say all that to say, so I also, my mom, who was part of a Jewish temple growing up, she learned about the civil rights movement from her rabbi, or like a local rabbi, who had come to the South in the 1960s and had done some marching, maybe was here during Freedom Summer. I'm not sure. I don't remember all the details, but that's how she kind of learned to become cognizant of like social justice issues, right? There was a rabbi from the Jewish community in Los Angeles who had come here to Mississippi, had done some work, gone back and told people, hey, this is important for our people. And not everybody, bought in. People didn't want to bring attention to themselves, right? We hear that a lot, from Black communities during the civil rights movement. Folks who were worried about losing their jobs, so they couldn't go march with King or Stokely or whoever it was that might be marching, right? And so these kind of things, I think, start to filter. And so, like I think what happens after the height of the civil rights movement is, one, the American narrative is that, okay, we're good. Blacks got what they want. They got the civil rights, the voting rights. They got the housing bill. The various things that came in through Lyndon Johnson's administration. And so what that allowed folks to do is go back and get complacent. And so then when folks are complacent and they're not in community and not in relationship with one another, whether they're Jews and Blacks, or Blacks and whites, or Jews and Muslims and Jews and Christians, or our indigenous brothers and sisters who get completely left out of the story, but who still are very much present here. Like if we're not in relationship with people, we're always going to build mistrust. And if our only sources are a 30-second social media clip that's in the context of book banning, right? The comic, I forget what you call it, a zine, that of Mouse, which was just the Holocaust through using mice as Jews, right? Like if we're gonna couch every part of our relationship in these 30-second sound bites without holding space with folks across culture, across race, across religion, then I think we are doing a disservice. So it's our hard work that needs to be done, right? You could grow up in Jackson. You could grow up in Jackson and get your PhD. As a Black person, you could grow up in Jackson and get your PhD without really ever having a concrete relationship with somebody who's white. Just like you could grow up in Oxford, Mississippi, and get your PhD as a white person and never really have a good relationship, or really a contextual relationship with somebody Black, right? And that exists in all pockets of our country, all pockets of our society, right? And so if you're not like, and there's a reason for that, because of our racial categorization for the last 250 years that's segregated us by housing, by education status, by everything, right? And so if we're not doing the hard work to go out of our way to meet people who are different than us, whether it's race, sexual orientation, faith, et cetera, then we are doing a disservice to hopefully a better society in the future. And so that's a long way to kind of answer the question of like what happened and why. I don't really ever attribute it to Black folks or Jewish folks. I think it's attributable to kind of the white supremacist patriarchal nature of American society that kind of values a hierarchy based on this false premise of merit, this false premise of, you can lift yourself up by the bootstraps, right? As Jews who are immigrants who are, working their butts off, a lot of them became, small vendors and small business people and all this kind of stuff, but there were still advantages in that like Black sharecroppers at the time were not getting, right? And so like that translates generation to generation to generation. And that's not really about the Black people, and that's not really about the Jewish people. It's about American society that's created these divisions, all along the way.
Absolutely. Recently, the Mississippi Senator Chris McDaniels was talking about the need to make sure that critical race theory was banned because he didn't want any race to be labeled as inferior. My translation of that was more of he didn't want any race to realize that through the system that inferiority was the way that policies were written, or the dictation of most of the policies that were pushed by certain individuals. And so I think you really spoke to that. The systematic injustices that have existed and continue to exist, a lot of them go through censorship, and a lot of them are able to prosper through this deflection away from the system itself of white supremacy and more to the word. Within white supremacy, there's more attention brought to the word white. So now you have people who think that you're trying to pin everything on every white person, like, oh, you're white, you own my great grandmother type deal. When it's when it's absolutely not that. It's more like you said, this is about systematic injustices of white supremacy, not every white person, or not every Jew is this way, or not every Black person feels that way, or whatever the case is. So yeah, these conversations absolutely have to take place for us to be able to dig deeper and create a land of equity for more people beyond skin color, complexion, race, or religion. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of the irony of this kind of fake discussion about critical race theory, because I don't think it's really a discussion. It's absolutely a talking point. Let's ban, let's censor, et cetera, et cetera. The irony is we've never taught our history correctly, right? Like we've never, our kids, our kids are dealing with it right now in Black History Month, right? They're learning about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, but they're not learning about Ella Baker and Bayard Rustin and Kwame Ture and all the other folks who've had the inventors, maybe a little bit, right? They're not really learning about, but they're also regimented into Black History Month, as opposed to this is American history, right? And so yes. To think that that we're doing something right, because the assumption by being anti-critical race theory is that history is being taught correctly as it is right now, and you have kids who grew up around the corner from where Medgar Evers' house is who have no idea who Medgar Evers is. Absolutely. Right? And that's so to say that there's some kind of like problem with critical race theory when we're not even, and it's not even a K-12 thing. It's like a legal theory, like at higher education. Like, so it's a false premise that that's even really what the conversation is about, right? I absolutely do believe like white people probably and the whole feel like they're somehow being attacked by the diversifying of American society, right? And so like it's how do we, Mississippi's always a great example of this, right? We have the most elected and appointed Black representatives anywhere in the country by number and by percentage, right? Right. But there's very little political power right? Because we've been gerrymandered to such an extent. You could look at Jackson, where 80% of the city is black, but probably 80% of the ownership is white. Like there's very little that doesn't give your leadership a lot of leeway to really make systemic change. And so I think it's pretty consistent. It's part of this kind of fake uproar around critical race theory. I think they're all tied together. It's like, how do we hold on to power? I mean, for the first part of the 21st century, every time we talked about like population shifts, as a white person, I was getting the message that, we're going to be 50%, not white by, mid-century or whatever, as a scare tactic. And it's a common thread that you might hear in kind of like news sources and TV sources, right? And it's such a weird premise to like make people scared of that, as opposed to, well, we have a beautifully diverse country. How do we respect people for who they are, what their experiences are? How do we acknowledge that? And how do we not think that that's an attack on me because I'm going to, acknowledge Felicia Tripp, who's a Black woman, and her history and her knowledge and her experiences, right? Like, it's kind of a weird way to think, like, oh, like if we hear more about her, that means less about me. Like, it's bizarre. It's completely bizarre. And, the fact that we don't even do it right now in our school system in terms of history, and we're just using this as an excuse to win political points, it's ludicrous, but it's also the American way. So.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I think you gave several people a lot of credit that maybe they don't deserve. I think that with critical race theory, I think they were focused on because they honestly don't know. Because there are so many bills that are presented where these people don't even have any idea, with their names on it as a sponsor, what was in the bill, what it was about. They just know who paid them. They know what lobbyists came from, what company contributed to their campaign. So they know to go ahead and take it based on that. But I digress. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And
yeah, thanks.
In closing, is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I mean, I think back to the point, like, if you can't look at what was said through anything but our American lens around race, right? And in which case, she didn't say anything that was that off, right? Because of her understanding of America and race. If you look at the world, if you look at colonized people, right, the which are really the global majority. If you look at how all the European nations colonized 90% of the world, you could think about that in terms of a lens with race in a global perspective. But the American lens on race is a very particular thing to America, and if we start trying to translate that to other places, we could go down some rabbit holes, unless we also have a real critical understanding of colonization and the impacts of colonization globally.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for your time, and please come back and join us again.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and enlightening. Thank you.
And enlightening for sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks.
All right, and that was an awesome interview with Mr. Jed Oppenheim. I hope you guys learned a lot. I know I did. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and tell a friend to check us out on Facebook as well as YouTube at To The Point Live. That's To The Point Live. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, Miss Elaine Williams, and that's with Elaine's Professional Tax Services. Give her a call at 601-573-1498. That's 601-573. And I forgot, we also have Clean as a Whistle pressure washing. Give him a call as well at 601-317-2196. I want to thank you guys so much. And you guys don't forget, if you need a DJ, reach out to Lady Cherie. I am Felicia Tripp as well as Joanna Archie, and we are out. Thank you for listening to The Point.